Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Frank, and today we're upgrading an Ender5 Plus. So this is a continuation to a little ongoing collaboration with Creality. Again, big thank you and huge shout out to Creality 3D for sending me this Ender5 Plus to do this project with. If you caught the previous video where we unboxed and assembled and got this thing kind of calibrated and set up, you'll know that we're going to be building an Iron Man bust. Now, I've had this printer running for a little bit. Obviously, it's still kind of my printer, so it's been putting in a little bit of work for me. I've put it through its paces. I've gotten a little bit of feedback for it and ran into just a couple small issues, but nothing that you're going to want to send it back for. Now, the problem with Bowden style printers like this is, pretty common. And today we're going to be upgrading just two components on it that I think will just increase the longevity of this and get you more consistent quality prints without having to worry about these things failing. I already did it on my other Ender5 Plus and it's been running absolutely beautiful. So we're going to go over just probably the two most basic upgrades you can do to a Creality Bowden style printer, and I'll kind of explain why we're doing it. I just don't want to throw upgrades at you. So there's actually two upgrades we're going to be doing, but there's going to be a third upgrade we're going to be talking about, which is completely preference that I've already done to this printer because I needed to print some things. So the first upgrade I want to talk about is the Bowden Tube. Now, this factory white Bowden Tube, while it will serve a purpose and you might never have a problem with it, there's a higher chance that you possibly will. These wear down very easily, and where they wear down is actually the couplers that go into your hot end and your extruder. And while wearing down in your extruder isn't the worst thing in the world and might give you a little bit of a spaghetti blowout, wearing out in your hot end is probably the bigger problem. Between the constant hot-cold cycles and the fact that it's a little bit of a weaker material, it will start to actually back out of that coupler and actually take a little bit of damage. Now, this is what your hot end actually looks like if it was off the outside of the shroud and everything. And your Bowden tube, there's no coupler on here, actually goes in through the hot end and it meets up to the back of the nozzle. So there's this nice seal sitting right there between the back of the tube and the nozzle. Now, the nozzle needs to have this nice actual seal with that tube. Now what happens is as the tube starts to back out, you actually lose that seal and you'll actually start to get leakage that can actually gunk up your threads, can actually come out the top of the hot block here and cause all types of issues. So not having your Bowden tube pressed down all the way is a real big problem, and you need to make sure it's a strong enough material to be able to take that. Now an upgraded Bowden tube, like a Bowden Capricorn tube, is a stronger PTFE tubing that won't actually wear down, it won't accidentally start to back out. So while you can utilize it the whole time, it's pretty much recommended right off the bat that if you want to just get it done with and do it right away, it's totally fine and it's very easy to do. First thing I want to do though is actually heat up the printer, and I'm just going to turn it on and heat up the hot end. So while my hot end's heating up, I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to start disassembling the extruder. So I have things routed a little differently than you might. I've already gone and done my own cable management, but you're basically just going to need to remove any zip ties or cable ties that you have holding this on. Pop off this blue clip, and you can do two things here. You can push down this little lock right here, and if you get a wrench or something, it actually does help you push it down. You can slide down this little lock tab and pull the tube out, or since mine's actually being a little bit of a pain, you can go and just take the whole coupler off, because if you're not going to reuse this, you can actually slide this off through the other side. Now I have some filament in there, as you can see, but you can go ahead and just pull that right out. And with my hot end heating up, I can go ahead and actually just pull the filament all the way out. So I was able to pull hard enough and actually get this tube off, and it might be a little difficult to see, but this Bowden tube already has a lot of damage on it, and it's already starting to wear a lot. And this is the side that doesn't even take any heat. So with this all heated up and ready to go, you're going to do the same thing and take that clip off. And if you've ever tried to remove this tube while the hot end wasn't heated up, you'll know that it is very difficult to take it out. So all you have to do is push the clip down once it's hot, and please don't burn yourself, be careful. Now it might be very hard to push down if you've never done it, and even this one's actually proving pretty difficult. And pull straight up. And you can actually see that it's already a little smaller, disfigured and kind of discolored, and it already wasn't having a good time. So it's a good thing we started to swap this out. And up here you might just be able to see all the teeth marks and how it was starting to wear down from all the motion. Now this is a little bit of genuine Bowden Capricorn tube, and this is probably some of the best stuff you can get. It's very, very high quality PTFE tubing, and it won't suffer the same failures that the white tube will. So this came in like a 3-meter roll, and I just have tons of it. So I'm gonna use the factory white tube to size this up. Now I'm gonna go and actually cut a little bit too long of a length with just a rough cut, And then what you're gonna make sure you do is you're gonna take something, and some of the kits come with this cool little cutter, or get a razor. You need to get a nice flush cut on the end of your Bowden tube, because if you don't, on the hot end side, you're gonna fall subject to that same leakage that I was just talking about. Now you have 2 shots at this, theoretically, because if you mess up one side, you can put that on your extruder side, and if you don't mess it up, you can put it on the hot end side. So we're gonna put this in here and try to get the best cut possible. That looks pretty good. So your kit might come with new couplers. Now, if it's not broke, I wouldn't fix it. I'd keep this coupler in there. You can remove it if you want and upgrade it, but I'm gonna leave it in there until it fails. And it has no reason to fail. It's the tube that typically fails. But it isn't a bad idea to look inside of it and make sure all the teeth in there are still intact. Now, you saw how far this tube went into my hot end that was removed from the printer. This is gonna go in quite a good amount. And you can even use the old tube to size up where those teeth marks were on just how far in it went. So this went in a good amount here, so you're gonna wanna make sure that it goes in about that same distance. So go ahead and just push it in all the way. Once it's down, throw your clip back in, and that's it. Now I'd give it a little bit of a tug up to see if it does move or wobble, but that seems like it's in there pretty good. And that does it for the Bowden tube. We're gonna go and do the same thing on the other side once we swap our extruder out. The plastic extruder causes a lot of issues for people, and they don't even know that it's the problem. Now, one big thing that happens is, since this is a plastic arm, and I talk about this a lot in some other videos, especially my Ender 3 upgrade video, that the constant pressure of this moving back and forth, puts a lot of strain on the gear right here, this pivot point, and what happens is it cracks. So while it looks like you still have pressure, this bearing isn't pushing against the gear, and you're not getting any proper extrusion. So if you're having weird extrusion problems, take this screw out and take a look at this extruder arm, and you'll see underneath it will potentially be cracked. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this. Now, it's a little bit different to remove this than it is on like a CR10S or an Ender 3 because of just where everything's positioned, and it's gonna take the whole extruder motor with it. So just be careful, don't drop anything. But we're gonna go ahead and start by taking off this arm with this screw, and then there's 4 other bolts around it. And all these upgrades can be done with all the tools that come with your printer. And see, I just broke rule number 1. There's the rounded side of your Allen key and the flat side, and you never want to break torque with the round side because you can very easily strip a bolt out. So always use the flat side, get that first turn in there, and then loosen it with the actual rounded side. The last thing you want is to strip out one of these screws. If the bolt on your lever arm is a little difficult to spin, all you have to do is just pick up some tension on it, and it should free it up quite a good amount. A lot of parts are going to come with it when you take this off. Now, if I was to take this off and flip it, right in here is exactly where it cracks. And we're going to upgrade that to an all metal extruder. I'm going to go ahead and unplug the extruder motor from the back. So now that I'm taking off the top 2, I'm going to hold the extruder motor up so it doesn't fall and do any damage to itself or something else. I would hate to drop this thing on my foot. It does have a little bit of weight to it. Okay. So this is your extruder. This is what extrudes the plastic, and a lot of people confuse this and think the hot end is your extruder. So this is exactly what it looks like. A nice little plastic extruder that could easily be upgraded. So we're gonna get rid of this thing. But there's also no reason you can't reuse the hardware that holds it in. The new extruder does come with a lot of hardware, but you can use whatever hardware you want. So when you get this kit, now you can buy the official Creality one, which usually comes in silver. I got this one off of Amazon along with the Bowden Capricorn tube, and it's literally just a clone of the plastic extruder in metal. It does the exact same thing in the exact same way. So if you're able to get the plastic extruder off, this goes on the exact same way, and all you have to do is build it up. Now it's going to come with a couple little extra bits. It's going to come with a new extruder gear. Now we have this extruder gear still on our extruder, and it works just fine. But real quick, I want to actually talk about a problem that some people have with this coming loose. Now you can see that there's actually a little Allen key bolt right there and right there. There's 2 of them. And this rod right here actually has a flat cutout on it. I don't know if you're ever going to be able to possibly see it, but it's directly at 6 o'clock currently, and it's a flat spot. Now one of those Allen key bolts needs to be pushed up against that flat spot, because if it doesn't, this extruder gear is just going to spin freely around this bolt. While it might be tight, tightening something against a round surface typically doesn't work. It'll lose grip eventually. So if you're having extrusion problems and you have an upgrade, you know it's not actually the extruder arm, and you have your proper tension, it could potentially be these bolts had come loose and this rod is spinning, but it can't actually spin this gear. So take a look at that, make sure this is tight. I'm actually going to throw an Allen key on this and make sure that it's actually still nice and snug before we put this back together. Now you can tighten these while it's still installed, that's totally fine, but this is just a good opportunity to make sure everything's good to go. And those are nice and tight, great. And then I'm just gonna save this one for a rainy day. They do wear down, they are a wearable item, so save this in case you ever need to, move this around. But what you can do is, since the filament is only touching a certain part of this, if this does ever start to wear down and get flat spots, you can raise this or lower this to actually give the filament access to a new set of teeth. So you can actually get a lot of life out of this. So we're gonna wanna put the bearing on this arm, and it sits just like that. And it should be the biggest headed bolt that's actually given in the kit. And it also comes with a washer, so make sure you actually install that washer. You're literally just mimicking your other extruder. And now you have a spare bearing, you have spare parts. You wanna make this tight enough where the bearing can still spin freely, but it's not gonna back out. So that's ready to go. And then we can actually drop in this little insert right here, which actually helps it pivot. Now I'm putting in the screw that's actually gonna help the spring have its guidance. You can put this on either side. It's literally just to keep the spring from possibly sliding off or flinging off. You can install it from either which side. The plastic extruder had it installed from this side, ran all the way through. I'm gonna put it in this way. It doesn't really make a difference. Just make sure it's in there enough where it's not gonna move or wobble around. So that's all the little bit of prep work we're gonna do on this. Let's go and throw it back into the right spot. Now, while you're building this back up, you might notice that there's actually a flat-headed screw. And what this needs to do is this actually goes under where your extruder arm moves. If you put one of the fatter head screws, the extruder arm isn't gonna be able to come down, flush down all the way. So make sure you save one of those and you put it in the right spot. All right, that's looking good so far. Let's put on that flush screw. Now don't tighten everything completely all the way yet. This way you have a little bit of guidance to get the other screws in, then you can go down and snug everything. But with these three on, I would go and tighten these three because now we need to actually get this, this arm in there, and we're not gonna have access to this one. All right, let's get the arm on. And you're gonna use this really long bolt that came with the kit. Oh, we forgot a step. You're gonna wanna put this screw in the arm, and this is the opposition guidance to the spring, and this helps it maintain the position on this side too. Basically like a sandwich for the spring. And again, this just needs to be ran down enough where it's not gonna come back out. So let's go ahead and install that. And while we move it up, I would go ahead and just pop the spring in there. And now you're gonna need to fight that tension to get this to install. So push this up until you can freely by hand spin this screw in. Okay, so now you're just gonna pinch this and test it. And that has some really good tension on it, but not too much. I like it. Let's go and throw our new coupler in. Let's plug our motor back in. That looks like we're good to go. So now that our extruder is built up, we can go ahead and actually put our Bowden tube back into the slot. Now again, if this side isn't cut flush, it's really not the end of the world. It's the hot inside you need to worry about. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this in there and throw our clip back in. Give it a little tug, good to go. Both upgrades are now done. Now, before we actually send to print, one thing I wanna do is actually make sure we can actually push filament through this. Now you can go into the settings and do an unload load, but I'm gonna do it a little bit of the brute force way. I'm gonna take some filament, I'm gonna feed it up through our sensor, and this will ensure that it aligns properly with the sensor. Not that it wouldn't, but I've seen weirder things happen. We're gonna push it up through our extruder and into our Bowden tube. Now my hot end's still hot from before, so I'm gonna actually put just a little bit of pressure against the nozzle and see if anything actually drips out. We can try to use my shirt as a little bit of a backdrop. Let's see, right there, and we should see something come out. That looks great. So I'm gonna pull back just a little bit so it doesn't continuously drip out. Now, I said before there was a third upgrade I've already done to this, but that we're not actually really gonna do today. And I have a upgraded nozzle actually on the printer. I have a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. The Ender5 Plus comes with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle stock. And why did I upgrade the nozzle? Well, a bigger nozzle lets you push out more filament quicker. Now you can't just put the biggest nozzle possible. Your hot end does have limitations. Through trial and error and testing, I've printed a couple things. A 0.6 millimeter nozzle helps shave down just enough time for me on prints. I can get bigger prints a little bit quicker without sacrificing too much quality. Now you can go up with a nozzle size, you can go down with the nozzle size. They make 0.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. On a stock Creality printer like this, a 0.8 is probably the biggest you can get before you have to start thinking about upgrading your hot end to put out a little bit more heat, because it does have to melt a lot of plastic much faster. Now, if you do have a nozzle clog, you do upgrade the nozzle, you do swap it out. A good practice to get into is A, you want to actually just pull all the filament out and get rid of it. I'm just gonna back it up a little bit. And second, you're gonna wanna heat the hot end up. You're not gonna just wanna remove the nozzle while it's cold. You're not gonna get it off. The plastic isn't, if there's any plastic or any leakage, it's not gonna come out. Another good thing to have is a socket wrench, and they make nozzle remover tools, or don't use the wrench that comes with the kit. Don't use the open end, 3-sided wrench. You're gonna strip the nozzle out. Please don't do that. With everything nice and hot, you wanna go ahead and remove your thermal sock, and it's gonna be hot, so please be careful with it. Make sure you put that somewhere safe, and you'll have access to your hot end. Now, this socket is gonna heat up when it touches the nozzle. It's just, that's how metal works. So you're not gonna wanna hold it up here, and you're gonna wanna try to work quickly. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And once it's hot, it should come right off. And that's our nozzle inside the socket. This is a very generic 6mm nozzle that I got off of Amazon. They have tons of kits. Read reviews, maybe get some suggestions from people. I can't really recommend a specific brand because this is like a no-name Amazon brand, but they've been working great. And they cool off so quickly that I can already touch it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this right back in. Now, the way I'll put it in, it's a little risky. I don't recommend this. Try to use it with the socket, but you can start to hand thread it in really quickly just to get some bite. But you have to be careful because it will start to heat up very quickly. So it's just barely on there, and then I can thread it in with the remainder of the nozzle. Now this does not need to be super duper uber tight. It just needs to be snugged down, and that's it. The nozzle's back on. So you can go ahead, throw your thermal sock back on. Again, don't burn yourself, please. And that's ready to go. You just upgraded or swapped out your nozzle. So I like my 6mm, and I think that's what I'm gonna run with for quite a while. So those are my 3 upgrades done. Some other talking points I just wanted to cover about the Ender5 Plus. Things I've noticed, this printer has been absolutely great, and it's quickly becoming my new favorite ahead of the CR10S, which, you know, helped me build Rome over here. The only problem I've actually had with this printer was just recently, the bed actually shifted while it was printing. The stock black binder clips that it comes with just quite wasn't enough. So I have this thing littered with more clips just to hold it, and I was having weird layer shifts, and I just couldn't figure out why. My belts were tight, nothing was skipping, but the bed was just sliding ever so slightly, and the print was already ruined by then. Now it doesn't move. So however you can get it to stay, stronger binder clips, more binder clips, that's fine. But this premium glass bed, absolutely amazing. The adhesion on this thing is ridiculous, and I actually just got one of these type of beds for my CR10S, and I might start replacing my magnetic beds very soon. I'm starting to really like this. When you do, when the print does finish, the nozzle does auto home approximately all the way to the left, and when you turn it back on, what will happen is your BL Touch will actually hit this rod over here and go tink, and it'll go into an error state. What I've started doing is right before I power the printer on, I'll just move this over and then power it on, and the BL Touch can fire up properly. Aside from that, this printer's been absolutely great. It's been a workhorse. I've really already maxed out its size, and it hasn't missed a beat. It doesn't have any wobble because obviously it's a faux Core XY. Don't freak out. Don't drop a bunch. It's not a Core XY. The XY moves and the Z drops. It's the same concept, okay? I don't want to hear it. Anyway, the bed drops. There's no wobble. You can print much faster. I'm printing at 90 to 100mm a second, and I know some people will laugh at that. Like, oh, I print at 200. I don't care, you do you. Now, having to do these upgrades aren't really anybody's fault. These are still DIY entry-level printers. Even at $400, $500, $600, you're still getting a lot of bang for your buck. This is a new and emerging technology. Creality is being pretty receptive to getting these upgrades and starting to produce a lot of these things. A lot of these printers have already been made. They're not really producing these anymore. They're sitting in factories, they're sitting in warehouses, Banggood.com, Amazon. So there are a lot of printers out there that they obviously can't go and pull back and upgrade. Now, if I can get a printer like this and I only have to spend about 20 bucks on an all metal extruder and a Bowden Capricorn tube, you can get them in a kit on Amazon. That's still a pretty good deal. This printer is absolutely awesome. And if you're looking into something like cosplay, making props, big things, this is really an absolute great investment for it. I kind of wish I had known about the Ender5 Plus before I got my CR10Ss, because I probably would have started with this right off the bat. The only other thing I've noticed is that my wheels on my wide gantry are a little tight. This side is making a good amount of dust on the roller wheels. It is the wheels actually starting to wear down and shred. So I do have to go and adjust that, but I don't want to adjust it so much where this wobbles left and right. So that's really my only complaint with that. Aside from that, it works great. I see people having bed leveling problems with it, and they say that their X-Home is all messed up. Go back and read the instructions. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or make fun of you. Like, really, the instructions for this, for the leveling, actually made a lot of sense when you're going through the steps. The measuring, the auxiliary leveling, the feeler gauge, the paper, it all made sense. Or go back and watch where I assembled this and built this, and hopefully I can explain it a little bit better to you guys. But once it's leveled and dialed in, I don't even have to adjust it at all. It just goes. So with these upgrades done, I know this printer is going to be a little bit more reliable. I can start throwing really long, big prints at it. And then the next video, we're going to actually start slicing, and I'm going to show you guys Cura and Slicer and Mesh Mixer, and we're going to actually mess with the model, and it's going to be more manipulating 3D parts. It's going to be the third part to this video, and then hopefully part 4 will actually get everything printed and sorted out. And then we can move into post-processing, sanding, painting, and that'll kind of all be one video in itself. Because I have videos for all that, we're just going to consolidate them, and I'll give you all the tools you need to actually start and go trying this by yourself. I really appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, if you could subscribe, that'd be really cool. It really helps me do all this. It keeps the whole channel going. It keeps companies like Creality and Sunlu and Monoprice aware of what I'm doing, and it really helps me continue all these projects. So if you could consider subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, you want me to elaborate something that maybe I didn't go over in depth enough, you want me to talk about something else in the room or something else that you're curious about, drop a comment, hit me up on Instagram, join our Discord. There is a 500, almost 600 member strong Discord dedicated to cosplay and 3D printing and everything in between, with noobs and experts, and it's just this beautiful mix of people. It's free. There's a link for it down below. You don't got to pay to join the Discord or whatever. It's just information, and it's not as cluttered as the Facebook groups. I think that just about covers it, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much, and have a good day.